Shalom, shalom. It's great to be here with Saul Austerlitz, who is the author of Generation Friends, an inside look at the show that defined a television era. Just came out in September 2019, published by Penguin Random House. Very exciting. So thanks for taking time to talk about this.
Thanks so much for having me.
So how did this show, Friends, come about?
So the show's two creators, Marta Kaufman and David Crane, they actually went to Brandeis together, and they were involved in the world of theater there, and they decided, okay, when school's over, we're going to move to New York, and we're going to conquer New York musical theater together. And they were actually quite successful there. But, the theater is a tough business, and they realized that if they're interested in writing and comedy, there's a whole world to explore in Los Angeles, making television. So they ended up... in a kind of unusual development for young television writers, they ended up being hired to work on a show where they were in charge of the show, a show called Dream On that was on HBO in the early 90s. And it was, for the time, a very high-concept show that involved using clips from Universal's film library to illustrate the inner thoughts of a divorced, middle-aged book editor who's kind of out on the romantic scene. And they liked it, and it was an enjoyable experience for them, but they also felt like it's too much work to put into these high-concept shows. You don't get enough emotional payoff. So they decided, okay, we're going to pitch a show that's really, really simple. We're thinking about our life in New York. We used to hang out all the time with these friends. We had this friend group that we spent all of our time with. Wouldn't it be interesting to have a show that was about people in their 20s, which was, strangely... not really a subject that television covered much at that point.
Right.
And wouldn't it be nice to have a show that was just about hanging out and being together?
Yeah.
And that was kind of the kernel of what would become Friends.
Yeah, that's very cool. So are there Jewish themes to this show?
So Marta Kaufman and David Crane were both Jewish, as is Kevin Bright, who's the third creator of the show. And I think you can see some of it. I got the official word from the creators that the character of Rachel is meant to be Jewish, and the characters of Ross and Monica are meant to be half Jewish. And I think that in some ways, the show's relationship to Judaism is interesting. It's sort of inevitable that it's going to be compared to Seinfeld. On Seinfeld, it feels like the characters are all Jewish, but then some of them are presented as if there's something else, that George Costanza is Italian, which clearly he's not. Yeah. With Friends, I feel like it's more that Judaism is present, but it's more something that belongs to the parental generation. The older people on the show are more explicitly Jewish, and the younger ones, by virtue of being less suburban and kind of less tied to the past, have less of an intimate connection. But it still emerges at times, so that you have Ross in one particular episode freaking out that he realizes his son only knows about Christmas, doesn't know anything about Hanukkah, and he's going to give him this whirlwind introduction to Jewish thought and Jewish history. And of course, it turns out that Ross doesn't actually know anything about those subjects, and so he really struggles to get the message across. But I think there's something interesting in there about the ways in which these younger characters are shown to relate to their heritage and their history, and it's all kind of tied up in their relationships with their families, which are inevitably complex.
Very interesting. So, last question for you. What do you think is the legacy of this show? Like, why do people still care about this and think about this?
Yeah, so the fascinating thing for me, and the thing that kind of got me started on this, is realizing that there's a whole world of teenagers out there who weren't even born when the show went off the air in some cases, who are loving the show and thinking about it and obsessing over it and treating it as something new and not this relic of ancient history. And I think that part of it is that, especially for younger audiences, this idea of, okay, I'm going to be an adult really soon, but I don't know what that means or what that entails. Friends provides a kind of map for them. It's a highly idealized map. It's a map where somehow you can be in your 30s and be married and raising a family, but still you have breakfast with your friends every single day. But nonetheless, I think it provides this really appealing notion of the future where, yes, there will be turmoil and struggle, but you're going to do it all with your friends. And I think that aspect is especially appealing when you're 15 or 16 or something.
Fascinating. Yeah, especially what feels like, I keep reading studies about the breakdown of communities, the breakdown of the number of friendships people have, or the weakening of those bonds. So that's fascinating. Friends, check out Generation Friends, an inside look at the show that defined a television era. Thanks so much, Saul.